It's an interesting time we're living in. So we'll go ahead and start the RDA meeting. Let's call this RDA meeting. The session is June 23rd and 2020. First time on the agenda is discussion of the meeting minutes of April 14th and May 12th. If you look those, I'll accept a motion to accept those.
I have one correction, Ray, on meetings of the May 12th. Looks like it's on page 2, just the adoption of the RDA tentative budget. Roll call vote has Mike Kendall voting.
Good catch. Did you catch that, Denise?
Probably not a big deal, but
Yeah. Need to fix that. Page 2. Page 2 of the May 12th.
yes.
Okay, got that, Denise? Okay, all right. Anything else? Yeah, I'll accept the motion.
I'd move to approve the minutes of the redevelopment agency electronic meeting of April 14th and May 12th.
Is there a second?
I'll second that, Mayor.
Sorry, who was that?
That was Jeffrey.
Jeffrey, okay. Motion by Dave, second by Jeffrey, that we approve the minutes of the redevelopment agency electronic meeting, April 14th and May 12th. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, see no, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor, say, raise your hand, right hand. That's it, okay. Opposed, okay. Motion passed unanimously. Okay. Next item is the public hearing on the final approved adoptions for the fiscal year budget. We need to go into a public hearing. I'll entertain a motion to go into public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, moved by Tony, second by Jeffrey. We open a public hearing for the purpose of the final adoption of the 2020-2021 fiscal year budget. Okay, all in favor of that motion to go in public hearing, raise your hand. Anybody opposed? Okay, motion passed. We're now in public hearing. Denise indicated that no one had called in to comment on a public hearing. So just briefly explain what this is. The RDA each year also has a budget that we adhere to, and this meeting is to take a look at and potentially approve that final fiscal year budget. That's the purpose of the public hearing. With that stated, I'll entertain a motion to close public hearing.
So moved. Second.
Okay, moved by Eric, second by Tony. Do we close the public hearing? Any discussion on the motion? See none, proceed to vote. All you please raise your hand. Jeffrey? Okay. Motion passed. Public hearing is closed. And I'd like to turn some time over to Ty to just give us a highlight on the budget for the RDA. If you have any questions, please feel free to address those questions on the budget for the RDA.
Sorry, I'm admitting Gary Crane to the meeting as well. So, hi, Gary. Okay, there he is. So in the packet, you can see the last column is the 2021 final budget for the RDA. There's a small description of the projects that you're aware of that we've accomplished. One of the big differences in the final budget, the revenue is a lot more than it was before, because we're now collecting 100% of the increment, and then we pay back each entity. So before we just did the 60-40 split, the RDA would get its 40%, and the other amount went to each entity. And now we collect 100% of it based on that new agreement. And then we pay back each entity their portion. And so in the expenditure column, you can see that there's how that breaks out and the estimated amount that we would pay back to each entity. Other than that, the budget's pretty much the same. We're still funding the hotel, and we have 2 outstanding RDA projects. We did close or do a reimbursement for the N building, the 101 Commercial Street building. We've paid that out this year. And so for this next year, we have the hotel and the other 2 in the bank building and Buzzies.
Any questions from the council on the RDA budget? Okay. If there are no questions, anybody ready for a motion?
Mayor, I'll make a motion that we approve adopt the 2020-2021 fiscal year budget for the Morgan Redevelopment Agency.
I can second that.
Okay, motion by Eric, second by Tony. Hopefully we pass resolution R20-20, which will adopt the final adoption of the 2020-2021 fiscal year budget for the RDA. Any discussion on that motion? Okay, see number 3 votes. It's a resolution. Will go by roll call. Eric,
Aye.
David,
Aye.
Jeffrey,
Aye.
and Tony.
Aye.
Motion passed unanimously, and that's been adopted. I might, at this point, I'd like to interject. Jeff sent me an email earlier. He's down on a cement project in Salt Lake on a project, so he needs to be excused for tonight. That's why Jeff's not here tonight. Okay, any other items on the RDA that you want to discuss, or any other questions you want to ask about RDA items before we adjourn the RDA meeting? Okay, seeing none, I'll declare the RDA meeting adjourned. Okay. Okay, we'll go ahead and now go into the city council meeting. I'd like to call the Morgan City Council meeting and open the session. It's June 23rd, 2020. And again, as we start this meeting, I'd like to excuse Jeffrey as he is on a project and wasn't able to come this evening. We'd welcome those that are here. Welcome anybody that's listening by way of the YouTube station. To start off with, I'd like to ask Dave if he would lead us in a pledge of allegiance, and Jeffrey if he'd give us an opening ceremony.
Okay.
And they'll bring the flag up in just a minute, and you'll be able to do the pledge of allegiance.
All right. Should probably arise. I pledge allegiance
Do the flag.
to the flag of the United States of America
And
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our Father in heaven, we are grateful for this community that we live in and for this beautiful summer evening that we have to meet as Morgan City Council. We're grateful for the members of our community and watch over and bless and protect them with the health and the strength that they need, that we can continue to move forward during this pandemic time, that we'll be able to make good decisions individually, and that we as a city will be able to help make good decisions for everyone collectively. We ask a blessing to be upon our state and national leaders, that they too will be able to help inspire the citizens of our country to make appropriate decisions to move our country along economically and socially and in every way. We ask a blessing to be upon our military and our first responders and those that are out protecting our freedoms. Watch over and protect them. Again, we're grateful for all that thou blesses us with, and help us to live worthy to be recipients of those blessings. And we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
And
Thank you, David and Jeffrey. Appreciate that. The next line would be the warrants. We had a chance to look at those, and these sent those out. If you had a chance to look at those, I'll entertain a motion on the warrants or questions if you have some questions.
I've looked through the warrants, Mayor, and would move to approve the warrants for, well, I don't have the time period in front of me.
Just be the set of warrants as presented tonight.
Yes, they've been presented to us then.
Is there a second?
second,
I'll
Motion by
second that,
David,
Mayor.
motion by David, second by Tony, that we pass the one set of warrants that were presented to us this evening. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. Lloyd, please raise your hand and count your votes that way. Okay. Everybody voted positive, so it'll be an affirmative, motion passed unanimously. Okay, next item. Denise, there are no public comments, is that correct? This evening? Nobody's tuning in? Okay. We'll move on down to item number 3 then. Item number 3 is final acceptance of Mountain Vista Phase 1, Phase 2 subdivision. What that is some of you may be aware, Tony understands this really well. When a subdivision comes to completion, they come in with preliminary approval. That starts a 1-year warranty. And then they leave an escrow or leave a bond in place to take care of any things that may go wrong in that warranty period. We've had everybody now use a seal year after, put on a seal coat, and then 10% guarantee piece. At this point, the letter in front of you is from Brent Slater from J. Jones Associates. They come up and inspect it, and they released it saying now it's ready for final acceptance, which means if we pass this, we would then give them, release the bond, release the escrow, so they can then take that money that they had in escrow to complete the project. Phase 1, Phase 2 is the development there with what some of us call the factory property between 700 East and the freeway. There are actually 3 projects there. This does not include those current condominium / townhomes that they're working on now. That's a different phase. This just be the homes that are currently have been built in that are 2 phases. Questions or statements, clarification on this item?
well, this would refund, this would not refund, but this would give them back all of their money they have in escrow, correct, Ray? We
That
wouldn't
is
hold on-
correct.
We would hold on anything, okay.
Did Jones and Associates, were they involved in inspections from the beginning?
Yes, they have been. Yeah, they inspect those projects.
And so they've followed it, and as the projects progressed, I think there's some value in that we have the same group doing it.
Yes, it's J. Jones. They are our contract engineers, and they help us design and follow through. They're at all of our planning meetings and our construction meetings, and they actually do review the plans before the projects ever started.
Thank you.
Further question or clarification? Or entertain a motion, somebody's ready for a motion.
Mayor,
Tony,
I will make a motion that we grant final acceptance of the Mountain Vista Phase 1 subdivision. The amount representing $57,531.11.
there's a correction on that.
Whoops.
There's a new update dated June 22nd. On top of yours, it's got a different date. There's a new one. I don't know if you need to screenshot that or not, but the date on this latest one is June 22nd. The actual amount is 86,366.66.
Then I will correct my motion to reflect the new figure.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second that, Mayor.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we grant final acceptance for Mountain Vista Phase 1 and Phase 2, the subdivision that's been amended, and that amount of that final acceptance would be given back as $86,366.66. Is there any discussion on that motion?
Mayor,
Mayor,
Mayor? Denise?
I just
I-
need to make a clarification. When I amended the agenda, there was Mountain Vista Phase 1 when the first agenda went out. And then I amended the agenda and added Mountain Vista Phase 2. So
Okay,
there's two separate amounts that will be returned to Wall Brothers.
oh, thank you.
So
So there's,
so one of them is the 57,531.11, and the second one is the 86,000, yes.
Yes, this
So
is
it's
just,
those two amounts.
this is just Phase 2, excuse me, yes. Thank you, Denise, appreciate that very much.
so Mayor,
Yes, Tony.
my motion was only for Phase 1. Should I have
Okay.
included Phase 2?
Yes.
I think you could include them both in the same motion, since
So
that's what's listed on the agenda.
So my motion should have been, I would grant acceptance for Mountain Vista Phase 1 and 2 subdivision. Grant final acceptance of Mountain Vista Phase 1 and 2 subdivision.
Okay, that would make sense. If you're okay with that. Eric, are you okay with that change?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Sorry about the confusion, but thank you for working through that. And the motion now is that we grant final acceptance for Mountain Vista Phase 1 and Phase 2. I haven't added those two amounts together, it'd be the 86 and the other amount.
So the 86,000 is just, that is just the Phase 2, right?
Yeah,
So we're releasing about $130,000 or something like that, somewhere in that ballpark together. Is
yes.
that correct? Okay.
Any further questions or clarification? Thank you, Denise. Thank you, Tony and Eric. Any other questions? Okay, we'll
Did
proceed.
we,
Go ahead, Dave.
Ray, did we ever have to draw on the contingency, the 10%?
No, we didn't. They followed through and they fixed them. The reason this
Improvements.
contingency, if something goes wrong, they don't follow through, but they did. They followed through and made the repairs they needed to.
Okay.
Ty and I talked to Lance this afternoon. They have done the chip seal over there. So you know, chip seal is part of this letter. The chip seal had been completed. Lance said he was pleased with the job they'd done. They used that advanced paving, the same people are doing our chip seal.
Okay.
Any further questions?
Thank you.
Okay, seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. Since that's not a resolution, I'll just go by hand vote. All in favor, raise your hand. Okay, any opposed? Okay. Motion passed and we vote unanimously to pass that resolution. Excuse me, pass that acceptance. Okay, next time we need to go into a public hearing. We have several items on a public hearing tonight. You have a sheet that lists those items. I'd entertain a motion to go into public hearing for those 4 separate items.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
It's been moved and seconded, we open a public hearing for those 4 items. 4 items in summary are adoption of the fiscal year budget, adoption of the certified tax rate, schedule of compensation for elected employees, and sales and use tax for transportation. Those will be the 4 items. Any discussion on the motion? If not, proceed to vote. All in favor of going to open public hearing, please raise your hand. Jeffrey, okay. And putting by post, okay, motion passed, everybody's unanimously voted for that. So we're now in public hearing. Let me, again, Denise indicated there hasn't been anybody called in for the public hearing portion. But just so it's on the record, I would like to just go through and give a quick synopsis of these 4 items before we close public hearing. Then we'll discuss each one of them separately as a body before we make any determination on them. I would like to suggest that we change the first 2 on your agenda, 5 and 4, and switch those around and go with the certified tax rate first. Quickly, what that is the state sends us what they consider a certified tax rate for our property taxes coming year. That tax rate we received a week ago. As Tony knows, in years past, we had to wait for that to come in later. Again, I appreciate Ty and him going to the state and getting that for us. And that's been one positive move on that certified tax rate. As you see that in your paperwork, that certified tax rate is 0.001524 is what they're proposing. They're proposing not bringing in $354,000. We'll spend more time talking details when we have a discussion with the council on that one. The second item I'd like to discuss as far as the public hearing goes would be the final adoption of our 2020-2021 fiscal year budget. The reason I reversed those 2, when we talk about the certified tax rate, if we should decide to take that out and go to a hearing on that, then we probably will not want to pass or need to pass the final budget at this point. It'll pass after Tuesday taxation if we should want to take that out and do that. The next item is the sales and use tax. We talked about that before. That's just on property. We have the option, if we should want to tonight, to pass that sales and use tax. Appreciate Gary's work last year in legislature on that, allowing it to get to the point where we can do that. Thank you, Gary, for that. We can go up to 0.33% on that. And what our purpose or our thought is last meeting, would be used as the income source to help finish the bridge off. As we think that bridge is a project need to be completed, this would be an income source to work on that bridge. We'll discuss more details as we talk about it individually. And the 4th item would be the schedule of compensation for elected, statutory, and appointed officials in Morgan City every year, so that it's transparent to the citizens. We need to put that out as an ordinance to show that salary schedule. That's the purpose for that. That's a brief summary for the purpose of the open public hearing. Any discussions at this point? I'll entertain those. If not, I'll entertain a motion to close public hearing, and then we'll in detail discuss those one at a time.
I'll make the motion that we close the public hearing.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, motion by Eric, second by David, that we close the public hearing. Any discussion on that motion? Okay, you see no, proceed to vote. All in favor of closing the public hearing, please raise your hand. Okay, any opposed? Motion passed unanimously. The public hearing is now closed. With the permission of the council, as I mentioned, I'd like to switch item 4 and item 5 around, if that's okay. We'll take the certified tax rate before we take the budget. Is that okay with the council? Okay,
That's good.
start then with item 5 on your sheet, resolution 2019. It's adoption of the 2020 certified tax rate and property tax revenue budget amounts. Ty, would you discuss that briefly? And then we'll open up for the council to give some pro and con thoughts on how we want to proceed with that.
Sure. So the certified tax rate this year came in at 0.001542, which is a smaller rate, but it's based on revenue. So the certified tax rate is based on a revenue generation, which increased our budgeted revenue from last year by just over $4,000. The year before that, we increased by $10,000. And the year before that, we had increased by almost $13,000. So this year, the certified tax rate only recognizes $4,000 of new revenue generated. I had budgeted, so that was the rate. We actually collected $366,000 last year. This year's budget, I just left revenue neutral. I put in $366,000, and that would prompt a property tax increase if we kept that revenue amount. And we would also have to do a truth in taxation hearing process, which would postpone the budget adoption and the tax rate until August 17th. So that's kind of the options. In the state system, I've typed in 362,000 as far as the requested or proposed revenue. It's not quite the 366 that we have in the budget, but every year we collect a little more than what is estimated on the certified tax rate. And so I think that 362 would be adequate. The challenge with that is it's considered a 2% tax increase. If we kept the same tax rate that we did last year, that would also be a tax increase, and we would go through the same process. That's kind of the overview. I do have a page of notes that I've typed up for myself, Mayor, if you'd like me to screen share that at this point, or if you'd like to have more discussion.
Go ahead and share that now, and then we'll discuss, and then we'll have the council discuss it.
Okay. Okay, so does everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay. So this is just kind of an overview of our history on the property tax. We do incrementally receive and recognize the new growth from the new people moving in. But you can see that in 2015, our rate was close to 0.002, and now it's down to 0.00154. We do increase incrementally over year, but every year there's a kind of an odd adjustment thing that happens. It's retroactive. And the other thing is our tax rate is based on the collection rate, not just property values. So our estimate is that we will collect 89% of the taxpayers will actually pay their property tax, which is another reason why the revenue is estimated at 354, which is a lot lower than I had expected. You can see in this chart, I just typed it up just to give a recent past history. I don't know, I've only been here since 2017, but I don't know that the city has ever increased property taxes above what the certified tax rate is. But you can see that this year represents a 1.1 increase, 1% increase in revenue over the previous year, which didn't make a lot of sense to me because we are building subdivisions and we've had quite a bit of growth. And $4,000 just isn't.
Isn't that number 1524?
Yep.
That's one of the state's proposes, 1524.
Oh, did I reverse that and put 42?
Yeah, it should be 1524 is the one the state's proposing.
Okay, so that would be a little more than a 1.1%. I just typed it in wrong. Thanks, Mayor. I'm a little dyslexic, so. So anyway, just for discussion's sake, we can do what we normally do and just adopt the proposed rate. This rate right here on my screen is wrong. But that's, the revenue is correct, that's what we would generate. The average home, the average taxable value of a home in Morgan is 320,000, which equates to $268 per year. So homeowners pay, you know, $3,000 in property taxes, but of that, only 268 of it's actually the city's portion. So a 2% increase is just on the city's portion. So that's option one, just to go that way. Option two would be maybe we keep the exact same rate that we had last year and generate 359,000. And that's the correct percent right there, is a 1.28% increase over the previous year. Oh no, sorry, because that's if we keep the same rate. And that would equate to a $3.52 increase per year on a home of tax value of 320,000. And then what I have in there as the proposed rate for 362,000 would also be a tax increase. The rate would be 0.00155 and equate to a $5.46 increase in property tax on a home of $320,000. Option 2 or 3 puts us into a, like I said, that truth in taxation hearing process and puts it off until August 17th. If we propose option 2 or 3 and do the truth in taxation, we can always back out of that and just to accept the certified tax rate, or we can do anything in between, but we can't do anything more. So if we declared or tonight chose to propose a tax rate like in option 3, which is a 2% increase, between now and the public hearing in August, we could adopt anything less than that to the certified tax rate, but we can't between now and then decide that we need more revenue than that was already included in the budget. It's a pretty tight budget year. Of course, you know, we have the Young Street Bridge project. That's where the local option sales tax is trying to help fund, as well as I'm trying to fund 100,000 of the current year's operating budget to go towards the bridge project as well. So I think that's this kind of where we're at, or the synopsis there, Mayor.
Okay, so the thing we need to kick around, let me just summarize it, and I want some discussions from all the council members. One option is to accept the tax rate as given to us by the tax commission. Tony's trying to make sense of that every year. They supposedly try and take into account the appraised valuation. And we haven't raised taxes, Tony, we've done nothing except accept the certified tax rate as long as Tony and I have been here.
That's correct.
And what that's done, some years, an individual homeowner even has to pay more money than they did the year before, even though we accept the lower tax rate. The reason for that is the assessor puts a higher assessed value on that property. So if the assessor does, and again, nothing against the assessor, that's what their job is to keep track of and keep pace with the current real market values. So that appraised value, if it goes up, even though the tax rate went down, it still could equate to more money that a personal individual homeowner would need to pay. So that's kind of the unknown in this formula, when the assessor reevaluates homes and businesses and what that equates to. Okay, what option we have tonight to discuss is to accept certified tax rate and accept that value as we've done in the past. That's one thing we can do. If we decide to do anything different than that, we will then, basically what that will do, that will create a truth in taxation scenario. In your packet, there's a piece of paper there that shows you what that notice would be. We have some various notices and public hearings and discussions, so forth, between now and August. And August would need to come up with a final decision after some public hearing. And we can do anything the council decides to do with that. Either maintain last year's rate without it lowering, which is at 1544, or we could propose a different rate. Those are some of the options. I'd like to now have the council talk about and give me your thoughts and impressions, and maybe we need to decide which way to go on this.
Let me just make sure I'm clear or understand. Ty, you mentioned with the certified tax rate, we will receive $354,829.
Right.
But ideally, you would need, or we'd like to use, or we would need $362,000, but that would trigger the truth in taxation. Is that correct?
Yep.
So I look at the difference between the two, and it's only $7,200. I mean, just my first impression, and tell me if I'm not seeing this right, but first impression is let's find $7,200 to take away from the expense side, if you will, or find other revenue, save the truth in taxation for a time when we get more bang for our dollar, I guess, if you will.
Yep,
I mean,
that's a
I guess
valid
that's-
approach. So, and like you said, it's not a terrible amount of money. It's just this year came in half of what we expected. And so I guess that's the question too for council is, do we want to do incremental or wait and push it off? So the future is unpredictable, but that's why cities get in a situation where they have a 50% tax increase or worse.
Mhm.
Because it's such a small dollar amount that we collect in property tax. If we ever have, so we start a new park and it costs X amount of dollars to maintain a new park, or like we have a trail, and those costs go up every year. Our costs, we can continue to control costs, but it's almost an artificial
Right.
reality, and we push it off to another day. So like, something happens and we have to start a police department, then we have definitely we're nowhere near where we need to be to keep up with the growth. So as the city grows, we either keep up on our own, or we, like you said, that's another approach, is let's wait. And as long as we do it, then let's do a larger tax increase at a later date. So you can do that as well. That's it.
Well, and I think some of maybe what we need to understand is what's considered incremental. I mean, if we were looking at 20,000, say, annual increases, could that be incremental as well as 7,000? I think there's some, if every year we're truth in taxation for $7,000, there's some political fallout that you've got to, it needs to be balanced in my mind. That and I can appreciate the statement, we don't need a 50% increase for sure. So I think some of it's just understanding what that, where we want to be in an incremental sense. How much should we be increasing from one period to another, and being able to do it. I mean, again, any tax increase, there's a mentality, a personality that would just say any tax increase, and maybe even considering economic conditions is forbidden.
Yeah, and that's for the council to decide of what approach you want to take, or if we want to. The other thing is, like, we keep making improvements, we keep getting grants, and that costs more in maintenance, right? So we just keep adding, we want to add another park, we want to add onto the trail. And so what I'm proposing is that the certified tax rate doesn't necessarily cover the new improvements that we keep making. So it's not just a cost of operation, it's actually that the city's growing, and that approach that you took, you know, if you said, let's do a $20,000 increase one year, that's a 57% tax increase. And so that's just something to consider. It's not a large dollar amount, but as far as, you know, the way someone might look at why are my taxes going up in such a hurry, then that's a good discussion on what do you consider incremental. And
Right. I think that's maybe where part of the discussion is. So 57% would be on the tax rate itself. It'd be the 0.001524 up to 57% to get you 20,000.
I just did quick math on that, so don't hold me to that, but
Okay.
let me run some numbers and you guys can also see how you feel about that. But I'll see where $20,000, but 20,000 is a legitimate, like you could really see that $20,000 doesn't go a long ways in an entire city. And I think, let me see what that would equate to based off of the $360,000 budget.
Mm-hmm.
Can I just mention,
Council, thoughts from us to council.
Mayor, can I just mention something?
Sure, please.
So there are different philosophies amongst different cities regarding, you know, the way that you increase taxes when you need to increase taxes. And I think what Ty's looking at, and just, you know, I'm not trying to read his mind, but I know the direction he's going. A lot of cities, well, there are several cities that increase their taxes. They have an increase or a truth and taxation hearing every year when they do their budget. And they increase it and they tie it to, for example, cost of living increase that is set by, you know, the GMP or whatever it is. It's set to a certain criteria or standard. And so they increase it 2 to 3% a year, and they always hold that truth and taxation. And it does amount to, you know, just a couple of dollars every year, but it's something they consistently do every year in order to keep up with that, with inflation essentially, or the increases in costs of maintaining roads, all those things. Some cities do that specifically for the purpose of not having the sticker shock of, oh, you know, we're here and we need a 50% tax increase after not raising it for forever. And so a lot of cities do that. Another way that some cities have done it is that they just hold the same tax rate from year to year. They don't change the tax rate. That, however, if you take a look at it and you actually do the calculations, because of the increase in property values, is going to yield a much higher tax increase probably over the years than just simply the way that they do it now, which is they try to balance it between increasing the tax rate and accounting for the increase in revenue because of increase in property values. And the idea of our property tax in the state of Utah is that unless you do something, you get the same amount of money that you got the year before with a very small increment for growth. And so some cities have said, well, you know, that's the way we're going to do it. We'll just bite the bullet every year. And it actually, in a lot of cases, that truth and taxation hearing every single year has become kind of just you know, like passing a budget. And so you have the hearing, you go through that truth and taxation, it increases by, you know, $2.50 a year. People seem to understand that incremental increase more than they do when the newspaper catches hold of the fact that you're increasing at 50%. So there's two different philosophies. The other philosophy is to raise it when you need it. And then the one in between, raising it when you need it, which maybe in the case of Morgan, I don't think you've raised the tax. I can't remember raising the tax since I've been here.
We haven't.
And so, you know, something between that would be what you're talking about, Dave. And that would be, you know, when you hit a certain point where the damage is so large, it's not so large that you can't handle, but it's an increment large enough that the council by policy says we need to increase the tax. When we're losing $20,000 a year, or when we're losing X percentage a year, we need to increase the tax. So those are pretty much cover all of the philosophies out there with property tax. And the reason for those different philosophies is because of truth in taxation and because of the way that property tax is collected in Utah. I don't know if that helps, but kind of gives you an idea of, and I think what Ty's recommending is just that incremental approach.
Mhm.
Every year you just do a little bit and do the truth in taxation as a matter of course.
That's great insight. Thanks, Gary. If property values increase though, does that mean that a certified rate decreases?
Yep.
Yes,
Yes,
So that our revenue stays constant?
that's correct.
Yeah, that's why we're looking at a new rate each year.
this is a convoluted formula, Dave, believe me.
So,
Yeah.
so
That's a-
I apologize. I had to go do some math real fast because anyway, it's a 5 point, like if we did a $20,000 increase to this year's budget, it would be 5%. So 5.35% increase, which would be $14.44 per
Mhm.
household at 320. And so it's,
Yeah, if 7,000 is 2%, 20, it'd
Yeah.
be somewhere in that neighborhood, right?
yeah. And so when I said 50%, I was just a couple decimal points
All
off,
right.
but
Just had
I
the
apologize
period
for
in the wrong
trying to do
place.
math on the spot. But
Yeah.
anyway, that's
Sorry.
also not a terrible strategy. And
Well,
I guess the only reason the challenge is we don't know what the certified tax rate is until
mhm. Right.
in the first or second week in June. Then we have to decide on it. And I thought, well, we collected 366 last year. Revenue neutral would be easy, 366. And in the last couple of years, we've increased by 10,000. And then this year it just came out at such a small amount. I hate to not stay at least on the same pace that we were at on the revenue side. And so it's all based off of the revenue need. And this is definitely a budget need year with the bridge project. And we'll be, like you said, you know, we can reduce our expenses by $7,000 any day. I think we keep doing that.
Right. Just
It's just
kick the
matter
can
of-
down the road, right?
yeah. And kind of like what Gary was saying, I think it's the truth in taxation is just a transparency
Sure.
process. It's just communicating the reality. And you
Yeah.
have a different viewpoint as elected
Absolutely.
officials than I
Yeah.
do. And I'm more of the career guy that I have to think I'm still gonna be here in 20 years. And at some point, if we ever have to do a 50% increase, it's gonna reflect on me as poor management. Why I didn't keep up on it. And there'll be maybe a new set of elected officials. And so
Absolutely.
we do have differing ways to look at it. I feel like we've done some really good improvements. I think there's lots to do, and people, at least that I associate with, would like that trend to continue, that even though it's gonna maybe cost us a little more, they know what their tax dollars are going
Mhm.
towards, and we are making the money go further. I mean, just the grants that we've received, I think makes every dollar count. And like I'm not trying to push one way or another. It's just kind of my budgetary reasons for keeping at least the same growth pattern on amenities that everybody enjoys in the city. So
Gary, question, how does, out of your three approaches there, what would Layton be most likely categorized as? What approach would they take?
Well, Layton just recently increased their taxes specifically for the construction of a fire station. And what I've discovered, and Layton hasn't, since I've been there, hasn't increased their taxes. In fact, under Bob Stevenson, they actually increased it by 2%, which I would not recommend to anyone because it is just, that's just pure foolishness, you know, when you're, especially as everything continues to rise. But so we haven't had a tax increase until last year. And when you do have a tax increase that is as large as we did, I think we went 14%. And so it was a rather large increase relative to increases. We still only collect about $2 and something, or excuse me, $200 and some dollars off a $300,000 home too. We don't collect much more than that. If you do decide that you're going to all of a sudden increase it a bunch, the strategy that you have to use, and I'm not saying that it's a false strategy or anything else, is you better have something really important to the public that you want to increase it for, because just increasing it for the day-to-day expenditures in a lump sum like that, it's just impossible. And that's the reason people don't do it. And so the small incremental would have been better if we'd have done, looking back.
The fire station made it work, but at the same time, even though you put that towards the fire station, once that's over, the increased amount still continues. And I'm sure there's criticism for that similarly, but.
Well, you got to staff it too. So there's an ongoing cost. We had actually reserved enough money to build the station, and it was the staffing and turnover of equipment that we needed to fund. And so it is an ongoing expense. We were careful to make sure that that was the case. So, but yeah, it is tough. Whoever has to increase it in the future, you know, to cover a major problem or a major construction of something, good luck. Because even with a fire station, with a fire up in Layton's foothills a couple of years ago, with all kinds of other things that have taken place on the East Bench, it still was a real difficult thing to increase that tax. There were still lots of people that weighed in on it, and the PAC's political action committees got their groups together, and it's
how close was your vote?
It's just over. Well, the vote on it was on the council.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I was thinking popular vote. Yeah.
Yeah. And the council voted unanimously for it.
Sure.
Because it was needed, you know, but they did have to cut a number of fees in order to, they cut the street lighting fee. They cut the, I think, storm fee. But they had to compensate a little bit for it by cutting other fees in other areas, which has hurt those particular funds. So it's I would not recommend what Layton did in that regard.
So another comment is I think it's revenue neutral. It's the same amount. It's actually less. The proposed revenue to generate 362 is 4,000 less than we collected last year. But it's considered a 2% increase because of the way that the certified tax rate is calculated. And so it's that's just another, it's supposed to be based on your revenue needs and your budgeted revenue, which is how I created the budget. For some reason, it there's just so many variables that go into that. I think that's another thing to look at, is it's not a increase, it's just considered a 2% increase. But you guys have the tough decisions to make and have to answer to the residents. So
For
comments from
all
Mr.
of us, Morgan folk, isn't that the strategy the school districts taken the last 2 or 3 years? They do a truth in taxation to keep it revenue neutral from year to year, but giving them more revenue.
Yeah, so they do that just to hold the same rate, which is considered a tax increase. It's more revenue, but what they're saying is, like, if you look at our chart here, at some point they drew a line and said, okay, you know, we don't want to go below this rate. And so every year, you know, they just hold that rate, which actually generates more revenue because every year it decreases. So they're saying if we just hold the line on the rate, then we'll capture more revenue.
Comments from the rest of the council?
Mayor?
Yep.
I have a lot of thoughts here.
Go ahead, please.
You're absolutely correct. As you and I know, I've never been through a tax increase hearing, truth and taxation. So I don't think we've raised this certified tax rate. I don't know if we've ever raised this certified tax rate, or we've just accepted what we've got from the state. There's a part of me, this may be a little bit weird, but there's a part of me that would almost like to see what would happen if we proposed a certified tax increase, option 2 or 3, and we had this public hearing on the 17th of August. I would be interested in seeing if, first of all, if that was even attended at all, and if it was attended, I would kind of like to get a feeling from the community about how they would feel about something like this. We've pretty much, over the years I've been on the city council, we've established budgets, we've approved certified tax rates, and we've had very, very little input from our constituents. For one, I'd kind of like to know how our citizens, how our constituents feel about something like this. Now, I guess I'm sounding like I'm maybe would go ahead with an increase just to get to a truth in taxation, just so we can get some feedback from the citizens. And I guess that's, in a way, is exactly what I'm saying. My other thought I have is, if it were up to me tonight, me personally, to increase the certified tax rate or to put in this local sales tax option, my first vote would be on the local sales tax option to help bolster up our road department. I know it's not an either or, but I'm just saying that one is, for me personally, is a little more, I think a little more important than even the certified tax rate. But I suppose certainly we could do both, or we could do neither. But anyway, for what it's worth, that's my feelings on it. And you did mention, didn't you, that if we go to truth and taxation, you said that at the end of the day, if we didn't want to, we could just accept the certified tax rate as it was delivered to us, correct?
Yeah, that is correct. And the other, I don't think it's a weird point of view, Tony, because one of the things that we always wonder about the attendance in the meetings is how many people are paying attention or seeing the postings. One of the things about truth and taxation is every single taxpayer gets a notice in the mail and are notified that their taxes are proposed to increase, and the date of the hearing. And so, you know, based on, like you said, what the attendance would be, we don't have very many other things that we've been through as a city that goes individually to every single person to notify them of agenda items. So that's fully transparent. So
you don't ever get a real good feel of the pulse of the community, because we don't ever have, I mean, my experience has been, we just don't ever have a lot of input from our constituents. My gut tells me that if we were to increase, well, I don't know how much of the, the proposed tax on the certified tax rate would help on the bridge project, but my gut tells me if we approved the sales tax option, and most of that money, or a great deal of that money, would go to the bridge, which I assume it would. I think you'd have pretty good support for that, but that's just, I'm just, taking a wild guess there, but that's kind of the way I feel about it.
Yeah, so to answer that question, about $100,000 of the current general fund in this year's budget is budgeted towards the bridge. The local option sales tax, every dime of whatever that generates is also budgeted to transfer out. So we have 100,000 in the budget, 110,000 in the budget to transfer to capital projects for the bridge. And then in the line items of the current budget, the road budget is also increased. I'll have to get the exact dollar amount, but we've also increased the road budget this year to also accommodate some of those costs for engineering and things. So it's both, but both of them are about at the $100,000 amount that we're trying to accomplish in this year's. So we can make it go as far as we can. So.
I mean, I realize it's never easy to raise taxes. I get that. I understand that fully, but it's pretty hard to just stay static as well, year after year after year. Anyway, we finally proposed the 1.0% sales tax increase to fund our recreation program. Was that last year or the year before? I 10 cents on every $100 spent. I don't think there's anybody that's even ever noticed that, but at least no one has said anything to me about it. But that seemed to have gone pretty well unnoticed by the public. And yet it raised what, $100,000 for our recreation program, somewhere in that ballpark.
Tony, maybe another way to look at that is it isn't that it's unnoticed, it's probably noticed, but just not objected to.
Or maybe that, I don't, good point, Dave, but I would bet most people wouldn't even notice it, but that's just my thought on it.
It's hard to say. I mean, the market usually behaves, prudently.
Yeah. Okay. Eric, Jeffrey, thoughts?
I've got some thoughts, Mayor. One thing I've been sitting here trying to think is I was always the guy that always used to be like, the government's getting in my pocket and taking money out of my wallet. I mean, I never was one for the tax increase or even, that. But as I sit here tonight in the position on city council, I keep weighing in my mind, what's the responsible thing to do and what's the responsible thing right now to do in the intermediate, in the present, and also what's a responsible thing to do for the future. I think that's part of our responsibility as city council, is try to look into the future and see what the needs are of our city and of our community. And as I'm sitting here looking at this chart and wondering what to do, I mean, we've got some big projects coming. I mean, would I be willing to increase my taxes and pay, $5.46 to build a bridge across there? I'd do it in a heartbeat. I mean, I'd pay that every time I went across there, almost. That's an exaggeration, but I mean, I think if people were aware of what projects we had going and what we were looking at and kind of a vision of what we were thinking, I think they'd be more apt to maybe be online with a little bit of an increase. We're going to try to make our city, improve our city with that. And obviously we run on a very tight budget anyways. People talk to me about the roads and I say, here's what our budget is for the roads. What do you think we can get done in a year? And that pretty much, and so it's always hard to do this, but I mean, I'm with Tony too. I'd be interested in seeing if we did have a meeting, a truth in taxation, to see what actually became of it. I mean, I realize there's people on fixed incomes and some of the senior members of our community or those in low income, it would affect them definitely. But, what's the responsible thing to do here is keep weighing on my mind right now. So that's kind of what I'm thinking, Mayor.
Jeffrey?
I've been rolling around the same thoughts. If we could go revenue neutral, rate neutral, but they are going to see a tax increase, if we can justify what it's for, I think we need to get ahead of the ball rather than continue to try and stay behind, get out from under it. That's just, goes against everything I've thought I always believed in taxes.
Mayor,
Yes,
I think Gary made a really good point. And that was, if you got it, let's say you got to this truth and taxation hearing and you did have a pretty good turnout. It would be a good opportunity for us to sit down and say, okay, here's why. And I think the reasons would have to be valid. I think Gary said you just wouldn't be terribly successful if you just said, oh, it was just sort of for this and that and the other. But I think if you had some specific reasons why it was necessary, I think that's key as well. And again, I'll go back to the bridge project. I think most people would be willing to ante up a little bit to have that bridge, but that's just my feeling, but I could be wrong.
okay. Other council members? Okay, couple thoughts then. Gary, using your crystal ball, how do we hold a public hearing with multiple people in August when we're still in shutdown?
Well, the Zoom will accommodate it if you wanted to do it that way. I mean, I'm going to tell you that our meetings are open right now. Everybody separates and they'll only allow so many people into the chamber at a time, but so they're open, but you could Zoom it. You could certainly have Zoom, and then you control who speaks and when they speak. That's the key. So you could do it. You could do it through a Zoom meeting.
Okay. The other thought I had as we looked at this, I appreciate your thoughts, all of you. For some reason, again, Tony and I have been around for a long time. Even though the tax rate has, look at that form that Ty's got at the desk, the tax rate's gone down substantially, the revenue's gone up. The one thing we don't control is the assessed valuation. We can say it's only going to cost you $3.52, but if there's a revaluation of properties, it could end up costing $10 or $12 or whatever. That's one piece we don't control with this, is what the property valuation does to the value of properties. That's the reason that even though tax rates decreased from 15 till now, the revenues have increased. And even though this last year, the revenues were the 360, even though we were only predicted to get 350, the extra $10,000 came because of valuation of properties. So I guess I'm talking both sides of this trail. If we keep the same rate, as Tony and I, as we've done for years and years and years, we have actually had more dollars come in, even though we've held the same rate, because of the evaluation of properties. So I don't know how that plays into it. I'd like to have somebody talk to that concept for just a minute.
What is COVID going to do to the value of property in the next 12 months?
Don't know, but right now it's increased. Right now, properties are holding their values and they're increasing currently. Don't know what will happen down the road.
I would say this at this point, I know that real estate's going crazy right now, that the property values are holding and people are putting houses on the market and they're selling within just a couple of hours, and it's crazy. I mean, there is still major construction and growth going on in the state of Utah. Everywhere I go, there are brand new homes being built, big, huge homes being built. So I don't see us going away from that in the near future.
Let's ask Gary. Gary, is the converse true? If home values go down, our certified rate would go up. Again, our revenue stays the same.
That's correct.
Yeah. So not a I don't know that that's a big concern.
Gary,
Yes.
this is a question I've always had, and so I understand it. Well, the whole purpose of your certified tax rate is basically to keep, I guess, is it kind of to keep everything revenue neutral? I mean, as Dave just said, home values go down, certified tax rate goes up. Home
Mhm.
values go up, certified tax rate comes down. Is that an accurate description?
That is, the goal of the state is to make sure you get exactly the amount of money that you got the previous year, unless you go through the pain with a little bit of growth, unless you go through the pain of truth and taxation hearing. That, I mean, that really literally coined exactly what Senator Stevenson said. That is exactly what the intent of it is.
So another way to look at that, Tony, is they're saying that 20 years ago, if we've always adopted the certified tax rate, then this dollar amount today is equivalent to the exact dollar amount that we spent 20 years ago on services. So that doesn't include any increase in new sidewalk or trail or any other amenities, increases in law enforcement or anything else. So when he talks to the tax commission, they recognize it's revenue neutral, because anytime you want, the idea is that you would trigger a truth in taxation so that the public, for transparency, is aware of what it is that is happening in the city. And so if we expect to grow, that the growth won't keep up with the new amenities or the new levels of services or anything in that nature. If that makes sense on a concept, yeah, it just means that today's dollars are the same, revenue that we would have had any prior year, after growth. Just a comment on the COVID question. What does change the values? Property values don't have these huge swings up and down like the sales tax reacts, but what COVID does cause, or a recession or something like that, is the rate at which people pay their property taxes. So we did have a year where they only 80% of the people actually paid their property tax, which triggers other financial things like properties get foreclosed or short sales or things of that nature. But the property value, or what is owed, doesn't really have these huge swings. And that also affects our tax rate, right? Our tax rate's based on how the percentage that we collect. And right now the average is 89% collection rate. That's not based on 100% of the people paying. So the revenue that we receive could be affected by people's ability to, keep up on their mortgage payment versus not pay their property tax and have a foreclosure situation.
If that dropped down to 75%, definitely you're going to lose revenue, tax revenue, obviously.
Yeah. Yep.
One of the mysteries of this whole thing is how the state calculates new growth. Because it's like Ty just said, in previous years they've considered our new growth to be, what did you say, about $11,000, and this year they estimate it to be only $4,000. Now we've added more homes, and that there's been more growth in Morgan than that amount of money, but there is no. I've tried to figure out what formula they use. Roger too has tried to figure out the formula they use, and he's sat on the tax commission for years, and it is just, I don't know how they estimate that. So you really don't get the full benefit of new growth in Morgan City, because as Eric said, homes are being built, but I'm confident that you're not getting the equivalent of that tax rate on those new homes, that new growth. So don't know why.
Well, Tony knows the formula.
Oh, no, if Roger too doesn't know and I don't know it, that's for sure. And this kind of the crazy thing to me too is I don't know the exact numbers, maybe Ty does, but it seems like in the last, this fiscal year that's just ending, it seems like we've built quite a few more homes compared to what we had done in the past few years. But that's what I don't understand. It seems like the new growth is probably, I'm thinking of the subdivision over there, the Thackeray subdivision that we talked about earlier. So I'm not sure, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me.
Mayor, maybe just a final comment on my, I kind of opened up the concept of the discussion, but it seems to me that we need a philosophy, and Gary outlined in, fairly straightforward 3 different approaches. We need an approach that is something that we can accept, that works for us and works for the community and the city. I don't think we have that, and I think I think we need to be a little bit careful that we're not just throwing stuff out there to see what sticks. I think my feeling would be that we need to hold off a year and maybe even study some other cities, see what works for them, get some opinions, some ideas. The fact that we make incremental increases based on a set factor, say a GDP or whatever it happens to be, and that it appears that it sells well, is probably maybe a process that could work for us. I think we'd all agree that we don't want significant increases, and we maybe that's our process. We have a significant one to begin with to catch up for where we've been, and after that, it's incremental. A lot of different options, but I think to hold off a year, there's opportunities to study it and understand it a little bit better. So I think I'd be would favor knowing more about where we should be going. Again, what kind of a philosophy do we want to take?
There's another thought I've had. If we want to live the way we did 10 years ago and not worry about any sidewalks, any curb and gutter, don't put any new parks, don't improve our park, don't put any new sidewalks in, and let our road deteriorate, then we can stay status quo. That's probably my nature. The kind of vehicles I drive, that's probably kind of my nature. But as a city, in the last 3 or 4 years, you can judge for yourselves what you feel we've done, where you want to go. The last several years, we have put in some new sidewalks. We've made some improvements to the parks. We've put in the splash pad. We've made some definite improvements. If we want to put in some other parks and increase our trail system, those kind of things down the road are going to need some maintenance dollars. We've been very frugal. That's the reason we have $100,000 still sitting there. We've accomplished some things with some grants. The reason we have that money sitting there is because of how frugal we have been. So I guess in my mind, it boils down to what do we or you as a council envision the future of Morgan to be? Do we want to do some things like parks and roads and sidewalks and bridges? Or do we want to live the way we did 10 years ago? And I think it's going to take some additional money if we want to change some things. Again, most my style is, drive the truck that falls apart. But maybe that's not the way you perceive the city wanting to go. And I'm okay to do, to make some changes. Clear back when we put together the Recplex. Everybody said that wouldn't happen, couldn't happen, wouldn't happen. The 3 or 4 got together, and that I think serves the schools and recreation better than what we had before. It was improvement and change. Eric can relate to stock show. When we first started that building, many people said it'll never happen. You can never make a stock show work here in Morgan. And some folks put it together, worked on it, made it happen, and now it benefits a lot of people because that change was made from the old scenario that was there. So I've been involved in a couple of new changes. I think they turned out well. That's not my personal nature. And maybe that's confusing what I just said, but I throw that out maybe to think about, where do you perceive, from your perception, the city going? What kind of improvements would you like to see happen within the city? If we don't want any, we've got sufficient, once we get the bridge built, we've got sufficient money. if we want to see some other things happen, then we maybe need to look at some income sources. I would agree with Tony. I think probably the one down the line we're looking at is that sales and use tax. I think that's going to be key to finishing off the bridge more so than this one. So I'd like you to keep that in mind as we make a motion on this one. I probably confused y'all more than I've helped.
No,
If there's more discussion, we need to entertain a motion. And the motion, we can either accept the rate as is and be done with it and pass the budget and be done. That's the 1.001524. Or we can propose a different rate, whatever that may be. We can go to last year's rate, which is a 0.1544 or something different. Though, or another option, if you want to put another option. So again, I'm not trying to cause discussion. You're welcome to discuss it further, give your thoughts, or somebody's ready to float a motion. At some point we need to entertain a motion.
Hey, I got a thought, Mayor.
Please.
To Dave's point, you know, if we did table this, and maybe I'm thinking at this point in time, we just approve the certified tax rate as it's been proposed for this year. To Dave's point too, if I remember correctly, in the budget, we have the general plan coming up that would be next year to kind of help us get a vision of maybe where we wanted to go and what we wanted to do. As you said, your thing too, one thought that crossed my mind is you own a home, one thing that you always want to do is to do a little maintenance on it and upgrade it and change it and add a paint to it occasionally. And you got to keep going with your home, or otherwise 10 years, 20 years, 30 years down the road, there's no value in it. So you've always got to be doing some maintenance, increase and remodel and changing some things. So to Dave's point, it may not be a bad idea to kind of get our general plan in place before we kind of decide where we need to go and what we're going to actually try to accomplish.
Other thoughts or a motion? Please speak your thoughts, or somebody ready for a motion? I'll take that.
Mayor,
Tony.
I'll take this for a spin, just to get some discussion going. I would like to, I will make a motion that we adopt option 2, which will generate a truth in taxation, but at least it would remain the same rate as it has been this previous year. 0.001544. That would be my motion.
Is there a second to that motion?
Actually, Mayor, I'll second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion by Tony, second by Eric, that we consider the option 2, which in effect just adopts last year's certified tax rate, which is a 0.001544. And that if we pass this motion, it would then generate or necessitate us to have a student taxation hearing and go through that process this year. Okay, any discussion on that motion?
I totally respect what Dave is saying. There's a part of me that agrees with him on that, but I just think that it's important that we at least try to stay static on this tax rate. And again, maybe this isn't the right reason, but I really would like to see what sort of input we would have in a truth and taxation hearing. Maybe this isn't the correct way to do it, but at least this will generate a truth and taxation, and we'll have an opportunity, I hope, of getting some input from our constituents. Who knows? Maybe nobody will even participate in the truth and taxation public hearing. I don't know, but I would hope so.
Gary, can I ask you a question?
Certainly.
Would you outline for us just a little bit about the process of truth and taxation? If we pass this tonight, then that would generate a notice. It would go out. We would not pass our final budget tonight. if I understand that correctly. But then what is the process from between now and August 14th?
Notices, and Ty, you're probably familiar with this more, maybe better than I am right now, but the process we went through is first we would send out the notice of a public hearing to be held on such and such a date to consider. And the notice is very carefully prescribed in state law, and it goes out to every property owner, like Ty says. It is also advertised the way that we advertise our normal meetings in the paper and on the website and on our state website. And then the hearing is held. At the conclusion of the hearing, and all this has to happen before, is it August 17th, Ty? That
I think so, yeah.
yeah, August 17th is the date that you have to decide whether or not you're going to increase the tax or not. And then that notice goes to the state once you decide you are going to or you're not going to by a vote of the council. And then the state will implement whatever you decide. And so to Tony's point, you'll get all the public input in every way that you can through the Zoom meeting. If you want encourage written input, we encouraged written input, and we got input, on our Facebook page and on our actually regular page. We have an email where you can just give your input and comments. And the idea is to get as much public input on it as you can, and then to be able to make your decision. And your decision should be made before August 6th, 17th. Did I cover it?
I think so.
Okay.
Okay, any further questions from the council or comments from the council or discussion on the motion? Any further discussion?
Nope.
Okay. Since this is, I'm gonna go with a roll call vote on this one. Let's see, Eric,
Aye.
Tony,
Aye.
David,
Mayor, I respectfully decline, even though I understand where we're headed and the benefits thereof, still feel that we need more direction on a philosophy or an approach that we should be taking.
okay, and Jeffrey,
Aye.
okay, the votes, and we have 3 for and 1 against. Therefore, that motion passes as stated. Okay, so that motion passed then to go with option 2. Basically, the thought is to maintain the tax rate last year of 0.001544, which will initiate us to start with a notices and student taxation meetings. Okay. Next item on the agenda. We move to that, then would be item number 4, final adoption of the fiscal year budget. With the motion we just passed, I understand we probably need to table this motion until the certified tax rate has been adopted. Would that be appropriate, Gary, to table it until the adoption of the tax rate?
That would be.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to that effect or some further discussion on the final adoption of the 2020-2021 fiscal year budget.
Mayor,
Tony,
I will make a motion that we table resolution 20-18, the final adoption of the 2020-2021 fiscal year budget.
is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, motion by Tony, second by David, that we table resolution 20-18, final adoption of the 2020-2021 fiscal year budget. That table, Tony, is that until we've passed a certified tax rate?
It would have to be, correct?
Okay, to a certain dates. The certain date would be after the certified tax rate has been adopted.
Correct.
Thank you for that. Okay, is there any discussion on the motion to table?
Just a point of clarification, the August 17th date, how is that determined?
That's a date by state code that's got to be accomplished by. We could do it in July or first
Okay.
August. That's a date we've got to have finalized by that date. So
Good enough.
we need to select a date sometime in July or first part of August, you know, whatever date we select, have it done, accomplished before that date.
Okay.
Good question. Any further questions or input on the motion to table? Okay, seeing no, proceed to vote. Eric? Eric?
Aye.
David?
Aye.
Jeffrey? And Tony?
Aye.
Okay, motion passed unanimously. Resolution 2018 has been tabled until after the certified tax rate has been passed. Okay, go down to number 6 then on your agenda. It's ordinance 20-01. It's enacting the Morgan City, enabling the city's option of sales and use tax for priority transportation need. Like most, you got the history on this, the background on this. This tax is on sales tax. Will be tax on sale items, and as Ty clarified earlier, except for it does not apply to food items, such as in the grocery store, non-prepared food items. So your broccoli, your Cheerios, your gallon of milk doesn't apply to those items in the grocery store. None of you like that for breakfast? Broccoli, Cheerios, and milk?
There you go.
Anyway,
Only in Morgan.
this doesn't apply to those items. The certified tax rate would apply to other items. A couple of updates things. If we should pass it tonight, there's a 15-day period, which Denise will then notify the tax commission. Then they have a 90-day period. And so that would put after October 1st. Then it takes effect the first day of the first full quarter. So it would not take effect until January 1. If we should pass this tonight, that's when it would actually take effect, is January 1. This money can be used for transportation needs of all kinds. It could be active transportation, it could be trails, it could be sidewalks, roads, so forth. The main reason we've talked about this at this point is as a funding source for the bridge. As that bridge takes place, this would be a source we'd use to fund the bridge with. The law, as Gary worked on, helps out this past year, so we can enact this one. It can be up to a 0.3%. We can go anywhere underneath that. We can go 0.2, 0.25, whatever we seem determined is appropriate for that tax rate to be. If down the road we needed to change it, we could adjust that tax rate down the road if that was a need. Those are kind of the basics and scenarios of that. I'll open up for any further clarifications, discussions from Ty or council members.
So Ty, one of the big, I guess, discussions on this is how it would affect our automobile dealers. And I would assume that we probably are in competition. I would guess you would have to look at probably Riverdale. So I just sat here and did some quick math while we were talking.
Ty, you want to screenshot your paper?
No, it's not. No, I'm not going to screenshot it because it's on a piece of scratch paper. So
No, I have some notes as well,
sorry.
Tony, that I sent them out to the council, but let me
Oh, you did?
just pull this up,
Mine
just
will-
some notes.
Oh yeah, I got that right there. But I was doing a $45,000 automobile, and I was looking at the difference between 6.45 if we went 1/4% versus Riverdale's, what was it, 7.45?
Yep.
$45,000 automobile, you're still going to save $453 by coming to Morgan. So I keep hearing this $500 figure that if they can't save $500, they're not going to come to to Morgan to buy a vehicle. I have a hard time believing it's going to make that much difference, but maybe so.
Yeah, it's definitely a huge consideration with the dealerships. They are a third. They represent combined, the two dealerships, a third of our sales tax revenue. So it's quite a lot of revenue. There is an advantage, and that's kind of why I put these notes together. The other thing I will say is I called the dealership twice, and I went and visited them yesterday to let them know that this was on the agenda in case they would like to have somebody kind of represent their side of the equation, and they do recognize that it's an advantage to have lower sales tax. I talked to the sales manager that's had a little bit different take, but you know, they'll definitely use whatever advantage they can to sell vehicles, and I suspect that would continue. One thing I did, and their tax savings is, from what I understand, based also on the nearest market, and that's why I did this historic comparison with Riverdale and Morgan, because it's based on Riverdale Road. That's our nearest shopping. So the vehicle dealerships look at where your next competitor is to say, you know, this is how much you can save by coming to us. There has been some movement in some proposals to assess your sales tax on vehicles based on where you live, not where you purchase them. And a lot of that comes from Wasatch Front dealers that want to equalize that playing field, and they are the larger purchaser of vehicles, you know, because our population is so small. But if you go back through the history, there's a sign at the base of the canyon that says you could save up to $503 by shopping for a vehicle in Morgan. And at the time that happened, we were, you know, let's just say it was between this period of 2009 and 2015, we were 1.1% different or less. And over the years, that gap has widened, and I personally feel like that we should give all the advantage that we can, but also we need to take responsibility for the options that the state has said. Collect your own. Here's 5 different options for you to collect your own revenue and take care of your own roads, instead of constantly asking the state to come in and maintain our roads. And we haven't taken advantage of we've taken 0 of the 5 options. We're only eligible for 3 of the options. And this is option 1. They call it the first quarter, section 2215 that we're talking about. Anyway, on this historical perspective, I think it is important that if we adopted 0.25%, we would still be a full % less than Riverdale Road, giving them a competitive advantage. And however they market that, if it's in a dollar amount or save a full %, I'm not sure. But it doesn't change the advertised price, if that makes sense. So if you go buy a hamburger, that hamburger's advertised price is the same, and then taxes added afterwards. You don't advertise your sales price with tax included. So for the consumer, nobody, you know, on most goods and services, you're looking at your sell price, you buy it wherever it is, and then most of us don't even consider, well, what's the tax on that, because it comes after. But specifically for our dealership, that 0.25% will preserve a 1% margin like it did, you know, going clear back to 2009.
So Ty, the Riverdale though, there's being the 7.45, how is that broken down compared to ours? Or are there other, I
So-
mean, do they pay the same state rate and so forth?
Yeah, so if you go up to ours, the 4.85 is the same everywhere.
Okay,
The 1% is the same everywhere. So the 1% goes to all of the municipalities, and it gets divided up. 50% of what we generate locally stays here, and the other 50% goes into a population formula that we get back. And then this 25 or a quarter of a percent is every county. So
Okay.
to that point, all things are equal, which gives you
Yeah.
a base of 6.1, I believe is how that, and then we've adopted a 0.1% recreation. So now we're at 6.2. So we're 0.1% off of the very floor on sales tax.
so for
In-
them to, so for Riverdale to have the 7.4, they've got other
Yeah.
recreation type places for the money to go.
Well, so what it is that they've, yeah, so what it is these counties, Davis, Utah, Weber counties have adopted the first quarter, plus Davis, Summit, Weber, and there's others, I just put our surrounding ones, have adopted 4 of the 5 0.25% sales tax options. So that's where 1 full percent comes from, is from adopting each one of those 0.25% for transportation. And then anyways, that's where a lot of the difference, and they've adopted them on a county-wide basis. So if you come down, because the county adopted it, then that's where Ogden, Layton, South Weber, those are all 7.25 because they've adopted that countywide. Riverdale is also, in addition to the 7.25, they've adopted a 0.2% city option sales tax outside of the transportation funding for their own needs. So like the recreation and that sort of thing. So
You mentioned that we were eligible for 3 out of the 5. Would we, and this would be one of those, would we consider the other 2?
yeah, so the third quarter would be the next best option, and we've actually passed a resolution as a council last year to encourage the county to adopt the third quarter. They didn't act on it, or it didn't go very far in their discussions, but we passed a resolution, and if the county adopts that one, then we would also get part of that. It initially was 0.15 to the county and 0.10 to the city to make up that 0.25. But after July 1, if they adopt it, then we would get 0.125 and they would get 0.125. So we'd split that one evenly between us. But it's at that point, it's really up to the county to adopt the third quarter, which we've left that door open if they decide to go that direction. The other thing on that third option is it's collected countywide. And this one, because we're adopting it on our own, it would only apply within the city, and businesses in the county would have a different rate.
So
Aye.
the potential's there then that if we suppose we adopt ours, the county could even next month adopt another 0.25%, which would become part of our tax rate. Then we'd be 0.5% less competitive than we are now.
Yeah, it's just very highly unlikely that they adopt any type
Oh, is
of yeah, they
Okay.
every meeting I've been to, they're really short on road funding, but they're also really hesitant to generate any new revenue for roads. I think that they would rather increase I can't speak for them, so I won't go there. But part of the strategy was we're just going to collect it in property tax.
But I think with that breakdown, the way it is, where all but the last recreation that we have, everything else is static. They're comparing apples with apples. That truly does make us, even with an increase, still quite competitive.
Yeah, the next closest community that I could find was Coville, and they're at 7.15. And they're a small community, and they're the county seat of Summit County, but we're not keeping up at all with the sales tax. And really, I think sales tax is, you got to look at what it pays for and where it goes directly to our own roads. We keep 100% of everything that's generated, and it's restricted to those items. Like the mayor said, this is really the only way we can afford to fund the bridge. Looks like we're going to have to bond for a large portion to finish our portion of the 1.8 million that's our portion at this point. But it's a really good use of funds. And then maybe Tony could do the math on it for us, what 1/4% equals on a $100 bill or something, to put it in perspective.
I think it's 25 cents on a $100 bill.
Well, even, back to your,
Dave's the bank.
I just comment, even say, back to your automobile financing. If you had a $50,000 truck to buy it here, you're saving $500. I think that's still a killer advantage for Morgan.
And I just did that math, David. You're exactly right. It takes a $50,000 vehicle, and you are saving $500.
Yeah,
as advertised at the mouth of the canyon. So what do we receive in B and C road funds now? Is it around 200,000?
Yep, $200,000 for all of our roads.
So if we were at 0.30, it would essentially double our road fund. It could double our funding for our road maintenance.
Correct.
Did you do it on 0.25? What it would, what that would generate?
Yeah, I actually, did I not?
Yes,
So right,
It's in the
Oh,
middle
that's
of your sheet there.
there.
okay, it's right here.
There you go. Just need to read my paper.
So 0.25 is the estimate right now is 171,000, and 0.3 would be 205,000.
So 0.25 would give us that 1% spread with Riverdale right now.
Yep. So the 0.3 would make it 0.95 difference. So we would drop below the full 1%. There's also Box Elder, Salt Lake, Summit, Tooele, and Wasatch counties are all at the 0.30, and Davis, Summit, and Weber are no, Davis, Utah, and Weber counties are at 0.25. So it's kind of a mix who's adopted what. Some counties have said we're gonna generate as much as we can for our roads through sales tax. And as sales tax reform comes online at the state, whatever it is that they decide to do, we have a really strong case to whatever we have on the books, they need to make us whole. So if they redo any of the formulas or change any of the rules in the future, a year ago, they were saying anybody that hasn't adopted these local option sales tax, we're going to adopt it at the state, and you're not going to have the option anymore, because they were that serious about of them giving us the option to take care of our own roads, and then us not taking advantage of that opportunity.
But brings up the question then, with that concept to keep the revenue the same, if the large dealerships won and sales taxes were based on your residence, would that be offset for us? I mean, a third of our sales tax coming from the dealers is significant.
So ask that again.
Would it, if the dealers said, we want sales tax to be based on your residence, not the county that the car was purchased in, we'd stand to lose a bunch of money. With the state's attitude, or would they make us whole with something like that?
I don't know how they could. It's always magic how they say they'll keep us whole when they redo the sales tax. But, you know, coming into this next budget year, I think sales tax is a big discussion item at the state. Is the state budget on the COVID is a lot bigger than what we felt. But you're correct. The only claim we have is if we have something on the books and we had taken the steps to generate the revenue, we would need to at least collect that much revenue, however they restructure, if they do.
Can I lend to that a little bit? They have tried it before. And because of the fact that there are big winners and big losers, even in the Wasatch Front, for example, Sandy would be a big winner and West Jordan would be a big loser. And their legislators came out of the woodwork to beat up Sandy's legislators over even considering the proposal.
Mm-hmm. Well, good. So we're not alone then.
No. The League of Cities and Towns would strongly oppose any shift in that structure.
Okay.
And then,
good.
you know, the hold harmless is exactly what Ty says. It's every time they change our distribution formula, which is you notice Riverdale is 7.45. That 0.20 is a special tax just for Riverdale, because the last time they fixed the distribution formula, Riverdale came out on the short end of the stick. And so they had to hold, there's about 3 or 4 cities, maybe more, that they had to hold harmless. And unfortunately, the hold harmless was supposed to be for a limited period of time, but they've had to continue it even to today. And I think it's 15 years now that they've continued it. So they do not want to do that again, Dave. I guess the short answer in saying that there would be a war up on the hill if they tried to do that.
Oh, good. Now I can go to bed tonight, Gary. Thank you.
If that's all it takes to put you to sleep, then
Yeah.
What
that helps.
One thing I kind of like about this versus, say, an increase in property tax, that this tax will be collected on, I mean, anybody that came into our city and purchased anything. So it's just not hitting our citizens. It's anyone that comes into our city and makes a purchase. So I kind of like that as well, letting others contribute as well.
I think it's something we need to do for all the reasons that have been discussed. Probably in my mind, just a matter of whether it's 0.25 or 0.3. And I guess it's maybe just a feel good thing. If we were at the 0.25, we'd be, comparable to our neighbors, the Davis and Weber counties.
I feel the same way, Dave. I would be a little more amicable to 0.25 than 0.30 as well. Just
Probably maybe a little easier sale.
Further discussion, or are you ready for a motion? Eric or Jeffrey, further discussion?
I don't have any discussion. I mean, we've tossed this one around for a little bit here. I mean, how long have we been tossing this around? For a few months anyway. It's been on our minds for a while. I think it makes sense to move forward. I mean, I just keep thinking the responsible thing to do. And I mean, it's hard to run a city on that small budget for our roads. I mean, it would be nice. I think we got some projects coming up that it would be necessary for. And so I'll go ahead and make a motion, Mayor. I'll make a motion that we approve ordinance 20-02, an ordinance adopting a compensation schedule for all elected.
Well, back up, try the one above that one.
Sorry, I was on the wrong page.
Try the one above that one.
Sorry. My bad. I was on the wrong
Okay.
page.
That will save a lot of discussion though, if you go ahead and approve
I
that
can
one.
do that one too. Let's just save some discussion. Anyway, my motion would be that we pass ordinance 20-01, ordinance enacting Title 1, Chapter 1.24, Article 1.24D of the Morgan City Code, enacting the city optional sales and use tax for priority transportation needs at the rate of 0.25%.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Is that Dave?
Yes.
Okay. Motion by Eric, second by Dave. Do we pass ordinance 20-01? An ordinance enacting Title 1, Chapter 1.24, Article 1.24D of the Morgan City Code, enacting the city's option sales and use tax for priority transportation needs. Is there any discussion on the motion?
Do we need to put the rate in there on the motion?
Oh, yes, thank you. The rate of 0.25. Yes, that was stated by Eric. I left it out. Thank you. Thank you.
I've got a couple of technical items. Maybe now would be a good time to
Go
ask
ahead.
Gary. Okay. So Gary, just chime in on the title. We call it the city's option sales tax. The actual act by the state, it's referred to as lost, the local option sales tax. Should we have the word local in there? The city's local option sales and use tax?
That would be fine. That would be more accurate, probably.
Okay. Just on page 2, again, these aren't big deals, but just to make it look good. Very first item there, the 1.24D, all the other D's are capitalized. That one's not. And then about halfway down, we refer to the state commission. I wonder if that should on the
Tax commission.
Yeah, Utah State Tax Commission, because that was the first reference to it, as I found.
That would be good. A good change.
Where's that, Dave? Which one? Where's that one?
It's 124D5, number 1, the second to the last line. It just says who has registered with the state commission. We probably want to call it the Utah State Tax Commission.
Any others, Dave? Thank you. Any others?
That's all I have.
Okay. Any other, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay. Seeing none, proceed to vote. Eric,
Aye.
David,
Aye.
Jeffrey,
Aye.
Tony.
Aye.
Okay, 5 ayes, all unanimous, therefore motion passes. Ordinance 20-01 has been passed by the council. Okay, next item. The one Eric wanted to help us get past.
Well, let's just hurry and do it then.
Yeah. Just quickly, it lists the compensation schedule for elected officials and other appointed officials of the city. You can see it in your book, in your paperwork there, as far as what that is. Discussion on that or a motion?
There's not much of a discussion to be had, is there?
Mm-mm.
See, that's why I was trying to do it. All right, here we go. I'll make a motion that we pass ordinance 20-02, ordinance adopting a compensation schedule for all elected statutory and appointed officers of Morgan City Corporation, providing for a repealer, providing for the, do I need to read all that? Providing for severability and providing for an effective date. Is that what I needed?
Is there a second?
I'll second. Dave.
Motion by Eric, second by David. We pass ordinance 20-02, an ordinance adopting a compensation schedule for all elected, statutory, and appointed officers of Morgan City Corporation, providing for repealer, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date. Any discussion on the motion? See now, proceed to vote. Eric,
Aye.
David,
Aye.
Jeffrey,
Aye.
Tony.
Aye.
Okay, motion passed of a 5 out affirmative. The ordinance 20-02. Okay, I'd like to also make one other change on our agenda at this point. I'd like to exchange item 8 and 9 and have city reports and business before we go into closed session. So closed session is the last thing we do. So if Ty's got some updates, or if any council's got any updates or questions you may have, you're welcome to ask those or give input. Ty, I'll let you start your updates while the council's thinking.
Yeah, I'll start with our customary Utopia update. As of yesterday, we have 578 people connected, and with the cities, our connection counts as 20 additional connections. It's 598 connections, and our requirement was 502. So we're still connecting at a pretty rapid pace there. So that's exciting. COVID-19 update. So we haven't seen an update on this week as far as recovery, but we've had 17 cases total and 10 recovered. We suspect that we have maybe 2, 3, or 4 more recovered. They just haven't shown up on the report at this point. The state cases continue to increase. It's a pretty sharp increase. We had planned to do some soft opening, if you want to call it that, on June 11th of our city offices, or June 1st. And I decided to hold off on that as the rates, numbers just started to increase. And then as I kind of suspected, that they really exploded. So we're still doing by appointment only. We're closed. We are in the process of installing a plexiglass in our front counter. And when that's complete, then we'll look at maybe opening the office at this point. Unless you've heard something, we haven't had a terrible amount of complaints. We have had some missed calls, people we've called back, but so far we've been able to keep all of the lines of service open. I think we're providing responsive service, and our home office situation still working out well. I think it's important that we've still been able to limit our contact between employees. We have a couple of really high risk employees, and I'd really hate to see everybody. If one of us gets it, then pretty much our entire city staff is going to have to get quarantined and shut down. And I'd rather keep on the pace we're at than to go through that. There's some potential that some of the state restrictions are going to get reimposed, just because the number of cases are starting to really tax the hospital system, which is what we wanted to avoid. We still have the 4th of July fireworks planned, but encouraging people to watch from home and not really having any other get-together. People can still social distance, but we don't want to host, the chamber doesn't want to host something that's going to create a huge group gathering with no control, and we really don't have the manpower to enforce an event that we sponsor ourselves. And so they are moving the fireworks to the high school so that they will be more visible community-wide. And so if you get asked about that, then wherever people were used to maybe watching them before, that'll still be an option.
Ty, some celebration takes place on Friday, but we'll do the fireworks on Saturday.
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
I think, is it the 4th of July on Saturday?
Yes, but
Okay.
some business closes on the 3rd on Friday.
Yeah. So the next thing is we have a fraud risk assessment. So this year, the state auditor's office put out risk assessment for each individual entity to go through. It's a questionnaire. It's kind of our own option to, or at least go through and reflect. And one of the requirements is that we discuss it at the city council so that you're aware of where our risk level is based on our elements that we've implemented. Being the first time through it, I was presently surprised at how well we did for such a small operation. A lot of these, when you first read it, do you have a CPA in your management team, and do you have total separation of duties, and the person that cuts the check never touches the register, and things like that. It's really difficult to accomplish. But with what we've implemented in our new accounting system, I think we're doing really well.
I think it was Gary's weight that brought us way up.
Thank you.
Yeah. Nice. So there's a couple of items that we need to do better. And they're really not difficult for us to do. So it's just a matter of doing it. One is item number 4, and I'm not sure if you guys all have, if you're looking at the risk assessment form. Okay, so that also helps make sure that I covered it thoroughly, because I'm not going to go through every item. You have the reports, and so unless there's any questions, then we can cover a specific item. But the ones that are kind of blank on that first sheet, are employees and elected officials required to annually commit in writing to abide by a statement of ethical behavior. That's something that we can create. We can just send it out. If we have that done by June 30th, if you'd like, then we would lower our risk level, because we're right on the edge of moderate and low. So that additional 20 points would put us at low risk, and right now we're at moderate risk. That's an easy thing, and Denise can help us generate a simple form for everybody to sign, and we can send that out electronically, and
Let's do it.
receive those back. So that's kind of the low-hanging fruit. And the other thing about that question is it's really ethics is probably as or more important than all of the policies. So sometimes policies are viewed at, well, here's the minimum requirement, and as long as I'm not breaking a rule, then it must be okay. And ethics goes above that, and really shouldn't bring policy into question if you're, operating ethically. And so we can do that. The next one on 5 is have all the board members completed a state auditor's online training. And that's something they created a year ago. And the state auditor's office thought, instead of just always being the heavy hand or the hammer, let's take a step and actually provide some training and be a little bit proactive. So that's a good resource to take advantage of. And we can send a link to that training and have all of the board members do that as well. And if you happen to do that by June 30th, it would have the same effect. We can report back, and we could do one or the other, or both. And
how long does the training take? Do you know, Ty?
I don't. Denise, do you know?
In one of my classes today at the conference, someone mentioned going through the different trainings that were on the state auditor's website took about a half hour. And there's 3 or 4.
I'd be willing to set a goal to do that by the end of the month.
One of the trainings is the Open and Public Meetings Act, and Gary does that every year. Dave would have missed that, but I think everybody else has got that one. So any of the other trainings, if you want to do those, and then just let me know.
Well, yeah, you'd send us the link for this one's related to number 5 there, the
Yes.
state auditor's online training.
Yeah, I'll send you a link tomorrow.
Okay.
So 7, I'm not sure how I feel about that one or how effective having an independent hotline for fraud would be, but we could just put the mayor's phone number out there.
So
So
we
that's
do
one of those.
anyway. Yeah.
That's one of those.
That's what Eric does.
Well, that's just one of those things, like some of this, when I went into this, I thought, this is really a test of what size of jurisdiction you have.
Right.
But we are doing most of the everything, but that's just one of those that it's a little more difficult.
Well, I think fraud and complaints are the mayor's phone number, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I thought I was the complaint department, so I don't know
Just-
how many the mayor gets, but
Yeah, just forward them to him.
okay. Hey, I like that idea. And then a formal audit committee. And then there's a couple other, we could formalize an audit committee. It's all of us. That's kind of what happens on the internal separation of duties is we modify and we have some control measures, but the reality is we make sure that everybody's involved in everything we do. So it becomes apparent, but I don't know, the council could probably be the maybe a couple representatives from the audit committee and a couple people, from the council and a couple of the management team members, and then our CPA could probably make a audit committee pretty easily, but
You'd probably want to consider too, Ty, though, the additional work that you or the city would have to do in putting reports together and whether the trade-off would be worthwhile for the 20 points, I suppose.
sure.
And putting it together is probably the easy part. The, functioning would be the one that you'd want to worry a little bit about.
Yeah, and one task I thought of is that just those our audited financial statements every month, just have a few people assigned to go through that so that we know that instead of it just being out there, that we could go through that and make any comments or feedback to the.
Would the state auditor have any direction or comment on what an audit committee would look like, how it would perform and what it should be doing? You take that and then say, are we big enough to be worried about that?
Handle that, right? Or if there's enough of an interest there. So
Right.
I kind of skipped over some of the items in number 2 on our policies, and I should have just mentioned that we are going to adjust our personnel policies. We're currently working on those, and so we'll address those 2 items that are missing on reporting fraud and abuse, and then a policy for cash receipting and deposits. So even though we don't have a policy for that, we do have position checklists and we have job descriptions that that's how we do the cash receipting and deposits. It's just built into kind of our operating procedures and not the policy. So we'll get that incorporated. And then unless you have any other questions, it just kind of goes through what we accomplish and how we do a couple of things through modified arrangements there. So, or mitigating controls, they're called, on page 2 on the separation of duties. So unless there, well, I guess I'll open it up for questions. If you have any specific questions of how we handle any of the control measures that we have in place, we could discuss them and see if there's room for improvement other than what the report maybe generated.
Do you have to report other than this assessment here on any of those measures? Do you report to the state on any of that, how they're broken down?
No, we just turn it in on kind of, there's nothing really tied to it. It's just the fact that we've assessed ourselves and we've discussed it with our elected officials, but most of these items are covered in our annual audit.
That'd be my point there. Yeah, the CPA would be asking some of the procedures and chiming in on whether that would be adequate or not.
Yeah, so they come through and do an annual audit. They interview some of the employees to ask if they know of any abuse or anything. They look at our procedures and kind of do more of a spot check, and then that's what generates an audit finding, is if something's you know, not in line. And I think we've only had one audit finding, you know, since I've been here in 2017. And we knew that one was going to happen because it was a road project that after we had amended the budget got moved up to the end of June instead of the first part of July. And we saved money by doing it. And when the guys are ready to pave, we say pave, and not like, hey, you have to wait till July 1st because of our budget. But anyway, we've been pretty good so far. Any questions on that? No, if not, I'll move on. The sun's gone down on Jeff, so he had to move into the house, it looks like, so.
Yes, good.
Mosquitoes came out.
Jeffrey.
My battery was dying.
Oh, your battery was dying. Oh, it is a long meeting. Just a heads up, we're looking at some electric fees, and then in July, we'd like to revisit our fee schedule. Our electric department, and this is in the new budget. The new budget includes a new line item for doing subdivision installations. And that's something that we've never provided as a service and something that we've never charged for. And so we'd like to have a policy or part of our fee schedule. So that backs our power department on what it would, what we charge people. And then the other thing we don't charge for is temporary power. So while someone's building, we come and provide them a temporary connection, and we don't meter that electricity that they use. While they build, then they get built, connected, we put a meter on it, and then we come back and take out the temporary, and we don't charge for that service. So that's something that we're going to be looking for in a future meeting. Just an update on fireworks restrictions. Normally, we revisit our fireworks restriction policy or what we adopted as far as fireworks restrictions. That's still in place. We didn't do that this year to make any adjustments, and I didn't think about it in time to include it on the agenda, you know, with all of the budget stuff that we had going on. The 4th of July kind of snuck up on us, but anyway, it was adopted and it stays intact. So we don't really need to adopt anything new. Did talk to Boyd, the fire chief, Boyd Kerrigan, and they're less concerned about the south end of town by Red Rock subdivision and kind of by the cemetery, but they still are concerned about the north side of town. And so what they're going to do is just manage that by signage. So they're going to put out the signs on fire restrictions in the areas that they're most concerned about, even though our policy covers both sides of town. So that's how that will work. Our water line project got started yesterday and started off with a bang today with a water line break. So we had a street out of service. I don't know if they've even got connected yet. It was a pretty bad 4-inch water line break, but they should be back in service by now. Then in July, the carbon-free power project is still negotiating back and forth. We have another decision point just because they've renegotiated some of the contracts, and so we'll do that in July. And DOE's participation has changed a little bit. They've just restructured it, and their commitment to the project dollar amount has changed, and also ownership of one of the generators that they were going to own before. Anyway, strategy changed a little bit. Project is still moving forward, just kind of a restructure there, and we'll talk more in detail about that in July. Just wanted to make you aware of that. I think that's all of my updates, unless Denise or Mayor.
Any questions from the council, or any question you've got, any update you'd like to make?
I just wanted to comment, Ty, I appreciate your commentary on the budget that you had there and on the those couple of other items, the sales tax option, that was helpful. The paragraph or two that you had on each one of them was helpful. I encourage you to continue that.
Thanks for the feedback. I never know whether to talk more or less because this is really your meeting, and I don't always wait for someone to ask me, and but I will provide my perspective and respect whatever decision is made. And you guys make really difficult decisions, and I appreciate it.
Well, and I think it saves some time at our meeting here too to have some of that information up front. So thank you.
Okay. And you'll notice too that the budget includes a little bit of a description for each department. Because we're doing truth and taxation, you maybe have some more time to go through that. And if you have any specific questions, every year I'm just trying to make it a little bit better than it was the year before, and talk about what it is that the budget's accomplishing and not just have just the numbers presented. So it kind of gives context to, we do have a strategy and we are making improvements.
That's helpful.
So you maybe read through those and prepare comments for our next public hearing on it.
Any other questions or input on any item? Okay, all right. We need to go into closed session. And it's got the wording there on your paper, what we need to go into it for. Denise, we need to take a minute now and wait for the tape. Are you okay at this point?
Give me just a minute and I'm gonna turn it off.
Okay, Denise needs to take a minute and turn off the YouTube, and then she needs to look on the recording. We'd like to caution each of you